Here's part 2 of our most recent Legal AI Live on LinkedIn. If you missed part 1, make sure to go subscribe at legalailive.com and check out our YouTube channel or Legal AI Live on any podcast app to catch part 1. Follow the Legal AI Live page on LinkedIn to watch us live. Without further delay, here's part 2.
So what do you think about the idea of interactivity? That is the AI asking you questions to elicit out your taste, to elicit out your humanity.
I kind of almost go the opposite, where I'll do a massive, I press the microphone button and I do a big old brain dump, and I'm like, can you find my through lines? Find like organize the chaos. And so it's like, I'm like, I've given you the interview. Tell me the questions I'm not asking. Help me organize it. Help me find the whatever. Because otherwise, even with a QA format, it sometimes veers toward a lack of burstiness or perplexity or very balanced paragraph structure, all that stuff. But if I'm like, I'm giving you some gold, find the nuggets, help me restructure it, make it 80% less typos, please.
So
go ahead,
go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go right ahead, Nick.
I think I pattern matched on this a little bit, and that plays a bigger role for me. When I know who my human friends are who are putting out content when they are, or colleagues, but when they put out so much content, I go, okay, so that is more a sentiment analysis, I guess, right? Or a pattern analysis that Greg can't put out a 10-page paper every single day. So I know that he's like, this is truly augmented, but it reduces the value in my mind.
Not always. I don't think augmented always does. I think lazy augmented does, right? If I did the brain dump
Probably.
and I copied the output without saying, no, what the hell, you flattened my voice, I don't like that, tweak, 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 and then I go in and then I put it in a doc and play with it. Like, for me, it shortens the window of time. So instead of 30 minutes, it's 15. Great. But it's the laziness where LLMs are lazy, large, lazy models, and they aim for the mean, they aim for the median, something that will appeal to the largest number of people. I'm a human, an individual, so I need to kind of beat it up to get what I want.
Yeah. And so I'm just saying cognitive effect on me, and from what I've heard from others too, right? If you're putting out so much, you start to go, oh, what else are they doing? Or how are they accomplishing this? And I think that has this kind of cognitive reverberation where I go, I'm not going to read this.
And this kind of goes back to the, proof of humanity, that, having it really long is proof of non-humanity. I've found that I tend to have my LinkedIn pretty short because I'm showing that, one, I'm respectful of the user's time, of the reader's time. Know your listener, be respectful of your listener. Short is better than long. And also there's a signal to noise ratio. I want more signal, less noise. And it goes back to, if I'd had more time, my letter would have been shorter. Right. So I wonder, what do you think about, proof of humanity actually being shorter rather than longer?
Very possible. I don't want to take from Greg. I spoke over him earlier, but I think, yeah, shorter is more to the point.
Yeah.
Depends on the human, I think. Like if Damien, if you had a 15 paragraph post, I'd be like, that is a deviation from his norm, right? Sorry, Greg.
No, that's okay. I don't know. I guess, yeah, length, just how frequently someone is posting. These are all signals that can, suggest that things are slop rather than human generated. But I think also the bar for what is provably human generated is getting higher and higher. I mean, there's all kinds of stories about novels and other long form writing where an AI detector has come back with a false positive, and a human actually maybe wrote the thing, and they're getting accused of just phoning it into the AI. And so, Kat, I mean, to your point, maybe the solution is, depending on the context, I mean, not in a legal brief, but for things to just get weird. And, you hear about people deliberately inserting typos into things.
I leave a typo. I do. If I see it and I'm like, all right, I'm going to leave it an hour or two. I don't really care because someone will comment on it. But then it's Cat 1e's. It's not Cat GPT.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, my writing style is not great, right? So if I put out, I've not done it academically or anything like that for years. So when I do a LinkedIn post, yeah, I might repeat myself, and I'm just like, well, at least you're gonna know I'm writing it, right? So that's that's kind of one of the things that I'll do there. But I'll say this as well, Damien, and even though I talked to both you and Matthew about Descript for podcasts, I will say
I love it.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And so I know that is some AI benefit, AI tweaking for but when I listen to further comments that doesn't come out every week, it maybe say it comes out every 2 weeks, or you guys take a break and I'm angry at you and I yell at you on LinkedIn about it. But when you guys put it out, I'm like, I listen because I know it's going to be in greater depth analysis on AI issues. I know that you guys are both busy, and so you couldn't get it out every week, or something happened, or you couldn't connect. I get that, and that humanizes it for me, and it's also just a better analysis, I think. So when it hits, I listen to it. So again, that's some cognitive bias there, but it's also just a more valuable product for me in the end.
So I'd like to remind everybody, this is a live show, and I've been posting questions that we're talking about in the comments, and we finally got our first human, a lawyer who's not a lurker, and former panelist of Legal AI Live, Jonathan Nestler. So I asked the question, if you're using AI to put out more content, who is it for? Humans or AI? And of course, Jonathan said both, with a laughy, rolling on the floor laughing emoji. And so we haven't heard from Ernie in a little while. So Ernie, catch us up with all your thoughts on everything we've been talking about.
Well, one thing I did a little research quickly because I don't know how many people follow Nicholas Thompson on LinkedIn, the Atlantic CEO. He has a segment, most interesting thing in tech today, and one of them relates to this, which I posted the link to track down the article, which was that when they tested AI, as he put it, they tested AI, and if you told it to create marketing and you gave it direction, it wasn't as effective as just saying, here's what I want, and it created something better. But when you better, meaning people act upon it. But when you tell those people that it was created by AI, they didn't like it, but they couldn't tell. So I think a lot of it is, can we really tell? Can we tell as much as we think we can? And then we kind of deduce it, as Nick was saying, by saying, well, they're putting out too much content. That's a deduction because you're looking for it. But if you're not looking for it, what is its effect? And I think if you don't know, maybe we're not as good, at least with the stuff that isn't obviously slop.
It's kind of crazy. Like early on when ChatGPT was released, I asked it to describe my writing style before I fed anything in. And I'd written so much, it was able to spit it back out to me. So I've actually noticed some posts that read as if I wrote them because someone said, hey, write a post like Kat Casey, which sounds super narcissistic, but there's like turns of phrase I use that are inaccurate and wrong. And I'm like, well, they're using the same mistake I use. So that obviously is like a fed-in thing. So it's almost like what is my voice now? If what was uniquely me was these foibles and imperfections and other people are replicating it, does that make me less human? And like, it's sort of like antithetical parallels. I love a good, it's not this, but that, but I can't use it now because I feel like it's AI slop. It's like, what happens when you have your human things you love to do, M dashes included?
I was going to say, I so
taken away.
resent what AI has done to the M dash.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I'm very ADD. So like parentheticals, ellipses, and the M dash were the only thing that made my run-on sentences make sense. But it's tough because now like there's so much content. I mean, some of us I've been on 20 years of LinkedIn posting nearly daily. So there's a wealth of content there and all these posts and stuff. So suddenly your voice is not your voice. It's been appropriated by people replicating it with AI, which then makes you sound like AI, which is sort of like a mind. I realized we're live, so I didn't finish that.
Yeah. So building upon, Nick had talked about further comments. Yeah, yesterday we did an interview with Jamie So, who of Legal Quant fame, and we were going to have Mike. I forget Mike's last name, but the guy who created the Mike OS. And
Will Chen.
Will, that's right, Will Chen. So Will will probably have on later. But let's talk a little bit about what Jamie and Will have both done with Mike, which is allegedly a Harvey Lagore clone. Excuse me. What do you guys think of open source maybe eating and nipping at the heels of legal tech?
First of all, Damien has talked about this, and I think Matthew has talked about this in the past. The interesting thing here for me is the potential for price deflation of the major providers. I have not used Mike OS yet, but open source is interesting. And and I discussed this recently on an episode that'll soon release, but Um, the price deflation has always bothered me for, not bothered me, but it's always been of interest to me for these non-foundational models, right? Like if you are built on one of the foundational models, and from what I recall, certain numbers were for 2 or 3 years ago, Harvey was charging certain numbers. And from what I've heard now, it's quite a bit less. And so my I wonder how these, and now if there's an open source project out there that can be competitive and maybe more easily customized by people like Jason and Ernie and Matt who are actual practitioners and I'm not, then what happens to these larger operations who are already experiencing significant price deflation in what they offer?
I mean, it's kind of the same dynamic that people are talking about with Spirit Airlines closing down and how that's going to push up, the cost of flights on, the major carriers. And
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little skeptical about it in legal services space because lawyers are so risk averse. Are you really going to just deploy an open source version and trust that it's going to keep your data in a walled garden and do all the things you need to do to meet your ethical obligations? I don't know if we're there yet. Maybe we get there, but I would be afraid to use it if I were a sole practitioner.
But what if you
Service
make it local? Or
What
what
if
if
the
you what if
service
you
and support
right.
though? Like part of why people go to a Harvey or a Microsoft isn't just the software being better. It's that they have people that can handhold them through it. So I think there'll be a tip of the spear group like us, or maybe Lit Boutiques or folks that are kind of very savvy. But for the average person who Harvey is already scary or Ligor is already scary, and they have this, 11 billion valuation, they feel safe and they have a whole team. I don't know. Sorry to me.
And
No,
maybe less scary if it's a closed system and then maybe air gapped and you could be able to run it locally. I mean that of course you have to be a pretty tech savvy today to do that, but maybe
I was gonna
not
say, if you
tomorrow.
said those three
This is the
words
thing.
to most legal people, would they know what that means?
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
air gap, they'd be like, jeans?
I mean, this is the thing, and it's part of why I think that, in 10 years, every law firm has an engineer as a part of the team, because I think we're heading in that direction. But one of my thoughts, I mean, like, Mike Oss is super cool, like, great to see it. And I think Nick is right. It will almost certainly, and things like it, the fact that this can be developed in a couple of weeks will drive prices down for some of this tech. But the ease of adoption
Yeah.
of a consumer tool versus an open source, right? Like, I don't have the time to figure out how to deploy this because it's not just me, right? It's my whole team. I've got to figure out how to deploy it. If we're going to use this, then we're all going to use it. And even at a small team, like that takes meaningful time that folks don't have, especially when we're trying to keep up with everything that's going on in the space. And so, yeah, I think the level setting I would say is even for someone like me who is trying desperately to keep up, it's too much to take on, at least in this moment. Maybe it'll get more user friendly and maybe I'll get better. Hanging out with you guys won't hurt in that regard.
And Jason, my friend Jason Bardwell had the good point that I garden, he said, but I also go to restaurants because there's convenience and curation to the restaurants, and so I think there's going to be a lot of money for restaurants.
I shopped at an in-person store recently called the Container Store. Has anybody ever been?
I love
yeah.
it.
Now here's the thing. I love Amazon, right? I've got a Amazon credit card for my personal life. I've got a business Amazon credit card. Give me that 5% back, baby. But
I want
going
to
into the Container Store with my daughter, who's like 5.5 years old, it was amazing. And there were things there that were curated that I never would have searched for, or the algorithm wouldn't have surfaced for me based on past search results that I'm actually interested in and like. So there's something to curation, to Damien's point that I just wanted to point out. But like, here's the thing. Like, I finally vibe coded my first actual app that I consider vaporware in the last month. And the only reason I had to, and I tried to use, like Ernie knows because I show up a lot to his meetings. Like, I've used V0 to try to like intentionally vibe code something in the past, and it was like pretty good. It was okay. But it was only when I was vibing with Perplexity, trying to find an app that did the thing I wanted it to do precisely, that I would have happily paid a subscription for, out of the box tech, but it just didn't exist. Right. And so ultimately I'm chatting back and forth. It says, well, you could use Jotform, you could use Typeform, you could use Voice Ask. There's like all these tools, but it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So then Perplexity said, if you want exactly this workflow, I would recommend building a lightweight custom page rather than trying to force these other tools into it. If you want, I could build you a simple mobile-friendly prototype HTML app that does exactly this. So then I went into Perplexity Computer to start building it out. And I was really scared. I was like, oh my gosh, how many credits is this going to cost? Because I don't know, right? Which goes back to like the billable hour thing. Like I'd like to be able to budget for vibe coding this. I wonder how much it's going to cost me. And I have no idea. So I had to repeat myself a few times. Well, a few minutes in, I was like, oh, I got to record this because I'm going to have to post this as content on Law Subscribed, right? So that's coming in the future. But I got to a point where like it got very technical, and I was saying, I'm not technical. Help me do this. It was like, you could do this. You could do GitHub. You could run it on your Mac. And then it finally was like, well, you could do fly.io, and you could use Fly. And I was like, well, what's Fly? And then I explained what Fly was. I was like, okay, all I need to do is like sign in with Google to make an account. And like, you'll do everything else for me. It's like, yeah. But then I needed to set up something in Google Cloud. I was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know anything about Google Cloud. But I was in Comet Browser. And so I opened Perplexity's AI assistant and I said, hey, look at what Comet or Computer is saying I need to do. Go and do this for me. And then I watched as I had one Perplexity AI tool talking to another Perplexity AI tool, going back and forth and copying and pasting and having a conversation. And I just sat back. It took 3 hours. I didn't have to do a lot, but that's about how long it took. And I had to and it got to what I needed it to do, and I wanted to make it better, and then it screwed everything up. And I said, okay, delete everything and let's start from scratch again. And then it took 30 minutes to get back to where it was. So if I knew what I was doing, it would have taken 30 minutes, but I didn't. But it only took 3 hours and $15 in credits. Not bad.
That's not bad. And software for one. You didn't have to build that for thousands of people. This is just for you. So that's point number one. Point number two is Fly.io. Maybe that's the best service for you, or maybe they paid an ad to Perplexity to be able to get them mentioned. And so there's a real question of that, SEO versus GEO, or, to what extent are we going to have AI EO? Third question is that, you could put it to Fly.io or Railway or Verbit or any of these other things, or you could just do a bare metal AWS server. And to the end user, to you could just as easily say to Perplexity, hey, go ahead and spin up an AWS stack with a Linux box and put as much CPUs and GPUs that you want on there. And maybe you don't need Railway. Maybe you don't need Fly.io. Maybe so. And we're getting weird.
Well,
right?
Here's the thing, though, Damien. I didn't know to ask any of that. But what I said is, I am a total novice. I don't know how to code. I don't know anything. I want the simplest and cheapest solution. And it gave me 3 options, and the one that required the least amount of work for me was Fly.io.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I love it.
And that's that is price deflation or not on these open source things. My comment in the chat here is most people are still, like Jason kind of explained, he's going to need. Look, I need something out of the box that works, that has security built in, that has support built in, that I can contact somebody. So that is one way that the Harveys, the Lagoras, and others are going to have a value here.
Last comment for me on this, though, is this is Legal AI Live, and this is what people are doing when they're asking for legal advice from AI. It's the same thing, and they want to know how much it's going to cost. Yeah. So that's something to remember for everybody.
But I think it's a false dichotomy. Like, it's not going to be Mike.os deflating the entire financial model of Harvey or stealing their clients. I think it's 2 different target addressable markets. It's someone who Harvey's not an option. So it's brute force manual or old school non-AI led tech, or using Mike.os. And so I think even with a lot of like the self-serve, even with co-work, what we're not seeing is necessarily like cannibalization. It's a different expansion of the target addressable market of people who are never going to be able to afford an enterprise license of Harvey, Lagora, Clio, any of them. Same ones who could maybe, like, for say a Disco or a Logical, they were usually competing against people opening stuff up in Outlook, not someone who had a Relativity license. So enterprise grade and scale versus open source, there'll be a little bit of overlap, but I don't think it's going to be as much lunch eating as maybe some people think. Like, there'll be a reaction in the market. We'll probably see some fake dollars disappear and reappear the next day. But I think it's more of an expansion of who's using AI first tech than that's my 2 cents.
Becomes a tiered service, essentially, right? What do you need for what your for your needs? Man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I do think the market for the the Mike Oss setup is going to grow over time, right? Like, I mean, joking aside, we're actively trying to get better, by listening to shows like Legal AI Live and further comments and trying to understand the range of possibilities and then go get the technical skills to adopt them because that's clearly what the future is. And so I do think that the number of folks who can navigate, open source technology is going to grow. We're hoping to get there within the next 6 months, but I think something like this in particular is just so foundational that a firm like mine is still trying to make sure that we get our data into a format that we can maximize it, and then eventually we'll get there. But I think a lot of folks are going to take a minute to get there.
It's funny you mentioned that, Jason just said that the market for macOS, of course, macOS is free, right? So there is no market for free, right? And so there's a real, and so then, because what macOS really is just a bunch of Markdown files, a bunch of text files that was created. And so you can imagine you, Jason, with your firm and anybody with their firm could be able to customize and say, well, that's fine out of the box, but this is the way my firm does this kind of document in this jurisdiction for this legal matter in this. So you could imagine that the cost of customizing free is pretty close to free. And so then what value is there from a Harvey or a Legora that give you their out-of-the-box solutions when you can have a harness like macOS plus your customized things that can be used with OpenAI or Anthropic or even a closed model that you run locally on your own thing? There's a real question as to where this ends.
And there's
5 minutes left.
a middle ground where, you're not doing what Matthew did. You're paying somebody to help you customize macOS and they ask the right questions and they give you something that's cheaper than, licensing Harvey or something like that. And I think that's just a broad model. I mean, we just hired a full-time employee who's just going to help people vibe code stuff. And so, that's a path too. And that creates a lot of jobs and, that didn't exist, a year ago.
What if macOS asks you the questions?
Maybe.
Sure.
I think people feel safety with humans though. Like if I'm not a tech person and I have someone that can be like, all right, here's the questions I would ask, like at least the first time through, it's a little less daunting. Like I think that we're going to move from SaaS as, software as a service to maybe service as a service again, or solutioning as a service.
So what if macOS feeds a human the questions to ask so that the human on the other side is really happy to do it? So we're meat puppets then, right?
I mean, it's like when you talk to IT, they're just Googling it too, but it feels so much better when IT tells you the answer.
Well, it goes back to the comment you were making earlier, Kat, around like, interview versus, Damien's question around like interview versus brain dump. I think it depends how much expertise you are bringing to the table, right? Are you trying to learn about it? In which case the interview is better, or, are you bringing the expertise to bear and then the brain dump is the way to go?
I'll segue since I know we're wrapping up here, but this will be an inspirational story for those who have stayed. And it's a segue from what Jason said. Last week, my father, my 83-year-old father, who is a retired real estate litigator and real estate developer, used AI to create a lease addendum for one of his properties that allows him to accept crypto. So he's 83 years old doing these things with AI, using AI to accept crypto at a storage facility that he owns. That is, if he can do that, everybody who's listening to this can start using AI. Secondly, what Jason said is he did have a base of knowledge with which to review this lease addendum, didn't he? He had some expertise in that to say, because he's like, I did it with AI and it's pretty good. I'm going to make some changes, but it was pretty good. So that is not inspiring for lawyers who are serving some people who are like, maybe all I need is pretty good. But he also get to give it the stamp of approval with his actual expertise. So.
Yeah, 2 points on that. Good enough is usually good enough, and then taste is what your dad gave to his taste, which is maybe different than your taste or my taste.
Right.
For the lawyers worried, there have been 2,000 hallucination cases and counting, so more wafers being generated by people not bringing in a taste master to curate it.
Amen. And maybe we all have taste. With 2 minutes left, let's. What are people optimistic about with 2 minutes left? Maybe a one sentence each.
Everything.
That's a good short sentence. What else from anybody else?
Margaritas.
Margaritas.
Everything over margaritas. Yes.
Matthew, what are you optimistic about?
I'm optimistic that this was maybe our most attended in terms of attendees, Legal AI Live yet. Almost a year and a half into this, we had peak 27
Wow.
live people watching, but over 80 people came in throughout the show. So I mean, even more people than were actually registered to like attend and watch. So very optimistic that people like hearing people have real human conversations about AI.
Amen. Jason, what are you optimistic about?
Well, in that vein, I'm optimistic that I didn't say anything too stupid and might be invited back again at some point.
I think there's 100% certainty of that. Nick, what are you optimistic about?
Almost everything with regard to legal AI and AI in general. But I've said it before. I'm going to say it again, that my education experience, which was always difficult as somebody with dyslexia, my education experience today is the best it's ever been. Better than law school, better than college, all because of the ability to use AI with it. So
Awesome.
honestly, one of the greatest educational, most enjoyable learning experiences of my life is right now in this time.
Everybody gets Aristotle as a tutor. And Greg, last word. What are you optimistic
Short and
about?
sweet. AI agents transacting with other AI agents.
Fun
It's
stuff.
just exploding in terms of all the articles that are out there and what the payment companies and others are doing, and watch that space.
Yeah, bots against bots, talking to the bots, and we can sip margaritas along with Ernie. We're at the top of the hour, folks. This has been a great fun. I think if we do with the transcript with the words per episode, we may be at our highest. I think people were talking fast, and we got a lot of content covered. So thanks so much for all of our panels for joining. Thank you to our attendees for listening, and see you at the next one.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll kick off the live stream in a second here. I just want to make sure LinkedIn captures everything. So follow all of us on LinkedIn. We're all on LinkedIn. Click the bell, click all, make sure you see all of our posts. Thanks to Don Swanson and Bill Price, who chimed in at the last minute too, in the comments. That tells the LinkedIn algorithm to share this because other people are actually watching this. So thank you, everybody there. And with that, we should be caught up on the lag. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
This was fun.
Thank you, guys. This was a
Having
lot
me
of
That was
on.
fun. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for
Greg.
coming,
This was
Kat.
great.
That was great.
Any other time, I'm happy to join.
Awesome.
Same.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.